sometimes, people tend to think that education is in conflict with excellence. I mean, traditional institutions, no? But you actually run excellent primary and secondary schools. So how do you see this? Does the difference between for-profit and not-for-profit make sense here?
Well, thank you for the introduction. I don't feel that we have the culture, the debate about profit, non-profit, the same way as it's established in other societies and in other countries. We see a means, as a private institution, we see it as a means of efficiently running and our company using resources for the excellence of the service we deliver. So we see there is no conflict in the way we approach education as a social service, which of course it is. It is. We're not the first provider, that's the state, but we are complementary of the work they do. And of course, because we provide, in our case, many thousands of school places, that's good for the state because they can use that money for their own state-run or publicly funded network of schools. So I think we are not only a good innovation hub, we like to share our practice, but also we are, I think, a good agent within the whole ecosystem of our public, part of a public-private chartered system in Spain, and I think it's necessary. In regards to your previous question, actually, Santiago, I was thinking, because we've been traditionally running schools and the university for now over 100 years, and we have this very peculiar perspective from 0-year-olds to lifelong learning, so we have the full spectrum of age groups. And the long-term really tradition, my feeling is that it has completely changed the scenario that we were facing just 30 years ago, 25 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It's completely changed. It's definitely right that it's a very exciting moment now for education, more than ever, because this is the learning society, so we all need to learn and relearn again. So it's an open, really, space for lots of innovation happening. But what I feel is what's recently beginning to change the rules of the game is the fact that for many, many years it was just formal education in the center stage. I mean, we were running schools, we were running universities, it was about formal education. And very few agents were invited into this game. They were not playing in the football pitch. Now you all are part of that non-formal, informal agents who are coming into education, and it's becoming an industry, and it's becoming a place for opportunity. It's a place for entrepreneurs, of course. So I feel that what we do need is to establish this conversation between formal education and non-formal and informal education, because transformation won't happen otherwise. From within the system, it won't happen. Just from outside the system, it won't happen either. So we really need to place and the right conversation happening for things to change, and they need to.
Sure. Bruno, you actually identified from a public institution, which is the European Institute of Technology, needs that are present there at the education sector at large, which are not yet covered by traditional institutions. Basically, if I can summarize the activity that you run, you link PhD students with the market, those who are more entrepreneurial, who may have projects, in order to find good sponsors or investors, and that is not actually satisfied by many universities today. So how can actually traditional institutions or many other entrepreneurs who are present here identify needs like this one and better serve the education sector at large? No? Could you tell us something about how you serve that purpose, which is of great use for the society and for the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, okay, we are talking about changes, and this is, for me, the real change, is we need now to train students in IT, at the master or doctoral student, but also to train them on how to become entrepreneurs. So we have to train twice much things in the same time. So that's, for me, the big change, a change of paradigm. And we want them not to go in a research career, we want them to become strategic people coming in big key accounts or create their own companies. So how can we? So we have a network of 19 universities, and they're all starting to shift the paradigm, saying, okay, it's good to have these PhD students, but we know there will be more and more PhD students, there will be less and less careers opportunities at university, and we need to do something with the market, which the market is looking for entrepreneurs. So this is why we decided to bring together during PhD 3 years or 4 or 5 or 6 years, depending on the country, we decided to inject in that some innovation and entrepreneurship modules. So it's not only theoretical cases, it's how you're going to create your company, how you're going to make it, who you need to meet. So we have a lot of CIO of company coming, discussing with them. But also, you need to identify the product during your study you would like to create. And then we will help you during your 3 years to develop it. We also do that at the master level. And this interesting I see that we're now running this for 4 years is that the students we're applying to masters and also doctoral school, they are coming with a different mind. They really want to become entrepreneurs. And at the end of the courses, most of them say, cool, you give us what was needed. So if we don't set up our company, what should we do? But we still have, unfortunately, some problem with non-European students that sometimes cannot set up a company in Europe. But this is something different. So this is, for me, the big changes.
Soumik, you represent an organization that runs different services for the education sector. One of them is the unit led by you, which is focused on preparing students to better pass, to better access universities through the GMAT, the GRE,
right,
and many other tests.
Right, yeah.
Let me then switch now to some other topic which I'm sure is of interest to our audience here today,
Okay.
which is how different are the skills of today's millennials, the young applicants, the young students from former generations, because you're actually able to gather lots of information. I wonder whether you are thinking about jumping into the big data industry.
Obviously,
because
yeah.
I mean, you gather lots of information about students. Maybe you can comment something about this.
Yeah, so one of the major issues for education as a whole is we have defined it in the legacy system of education is we have defined it as a service, all right? And as we have seen with other services like, let's say, the telegram, which was used for communicating with each other, which was disrupted by technology, which acted as a tool, rather than a service. So all that we are doing now, and we're looking ahead in the next 5 or 10 years of innovation, we are looking at 2 sets of innovation. One is we are looking at the format innovation, which an example could be the Khan Academy, which provides format innovation in terms of learning videos and all that. The other is the framework innovation. So what you see in, let's say, or what we saw in MOOCs, for example, it's still not perfect, but it's a part of the framework innovation. So while you need both of them, the format and the framework innovation, to go ahead, the kind of, let's say, behavior that the candidate is doing, or while he or she is learning, the kind of, let's say, the kind of system learning that we get from their behavior is very critical. Because what effectively happens is, for learning to be successful, there are 2 major things. You need to be highly motivated, and you need to have low efforts to learn, all right? One of the reasons why a lot of people drop out of MOOCs or drop out of schools and all that is either they lose motivation to learn, or the effort to learn is really heavy. So if we are designing for the future and the kind of data we are looking at to capture and make sense for learning, we are looking at the kind of motivational triggers and the kind of efforts, both linked to framework and format innovation. So yes, I mean, going ahead, big data, the kind of, let's say, intelligence-based guided systems and all that would be relevant for learning. And that should change the landscape of education.
This raises actually a very fascinating issue, which is how to adapt the education to the needs of each participant or student, how we can actually identify the skills and strengthen them. And I was wondering, companies like yours, Tas, for example, which is very much focused on efficacy, measuring the impact of education, or Busuu, Bernhard, you probably follow your participants, your students very closely. So how do you see actually this evolving? How efficacy or the assessment of learning can actually be run at your companies?
Yeah, so let me say just a couple of things for the benefit of everyone about what we mean about efficacy. And I think our previous CEO called it a very beautiful concept with a very ugly word. I mean, it comes from clearly the pharmaceutical industry and being able to actually understand the impact that an educational solution has in terms of learning. And it starts from being very, very clear in terms of what are the outcomes you are trying to influence when you develop an intervention, having the right resources and being able to design the intervention in such a way, and of course being able to measure and understand, have you actually achieved what you set out to achieve with this course, with this material, with this type of product. And I think what is most fundamental about efficacy, and I think it is a change which is coming everywhere in education, is this shift from inputs to facing more into outputs. I.e. being not so much, not having the starting point of this, I am bringing a good teacher to you, or I'm bringing a good piece of content to you, but actually, what is your goal? What are you trying to achieve with education, and how can I put the best solution for you to achieve your goal, and then be able to measure and prove to you that I have actually helped you in achieving that. I think that shift in thinking for education about moving towards outputs is probably the most fundamental shift that's happening already.
Right. Bernardo, do you actually follow the very individually or in a very adaptive way the learning of the participants at your platform?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's no doubt that the future of education lies a lot in adaptive learning. Because traditional education has several challenges. It's geographically restricted. You only can go to the place where the closest university is. And basically everyone is also restricted to the same time it takes to do a course. So there's a semester. But who has decided that a course needs to be a semester? It should be according to the individual student. It should be according to the individual person. And some people might go quicker, and others might just take longer. And with adaptive learning, with big data, we should be able to massively improve the outcome of learning. And we have recently received investment from Quacquarelli Education, which is a big player and big investor in adaptive learning. And what it means for us to be able to connect to an adaptive algorithm that should be able to completely customize the learning path for each individual student. Because we know already when people log on at which time, we know what level they have in the different languages. They can tell us where they want to go with their language skills, and might it be just a weekend in Madrid, or do they want to study in Barcelona? Entirely different use cases, and also personal interests, because there are empirical studies that show the more the content is related to your individual interest, the higher is the learning outcome. So we could completely customize your English, Spanish, French, and German course to the individual user. And I think that's going to be the next generation of education technology companies. What we have now done is put language learning online or on mobile devices, but now the next challenge is going to be how can we actually cut down the time it takes to learn another language.
Can I raise a question? And of course, I'm looking forward, your responses from different perspectives, because some of you do actually work in the delivery of education, some others in supporting services. But how far is technology humanizing the learning process? There's a conflict here about whether professors can be replaced by robots at some stage, whether algorithms are going to replace the way we assess students today. And some teachers or some people who have a more traditional view of education see this trend with fear, no? And I was wondering how far technology can actually humanize education, or the reverse, no? Nieves, what do you think about this? Because I'm sure that you're already implementing initiatives at your schools.
No, sure. I think that, of course, those teachers who were working in the classrooms like robots will be replaced. Those teachers not delivering in the proper ways, the ways that are possible right now, their classes should be replaced. There are certain things that cannot be done by robots, and those are the things. This is really, again, a change in the rules of the game we were playing. Now, of course, we're talking a lot about the new role of teachers. So I do feel that technology is bringing up, is really taking the role of teachers further where it should always have been. The problem with our industrialized education system is that, in the end, teachers were working like robots. They were delivering one class after the other and doing things that can easily be replaced. Well, those things should be replaced. But others that machines will never be able to do need to be enhanced. And that will be one of the big transformations in terms of education. And that definitely needs to happen. I think, and I fully agree with the rest of the panel, technology is making education personal. And nothing is more human than that. I mean, adaptive learning, personalized learning can finally happen. And we've been talking about this for many years. In an old traditional school or university setting, personalized education could not happen. Now, because we have technology that can adapt to different learning styles and different learning rhythms of every child that we know is different, we can do that magic that was impossible before. And of course, the role of teachers to become more and more human and try to have their students become more and more human. So I definitely think that technology used the right way will help us in really making those personal learning pathways real.
A very direct question here, and I wonder what do you think, Bruno, about this, maybe Soumik, how Coursera, I mean, providers like Coursera or Udacity or those offering massive online open courses, are they actually replacing or producing a sort of substitute effect here in the traditional education industry? Do you think that in time a good number of universities may disappear and be replaced by those MOOC providers, or maybe by new entrants, different species?
I do believe they're not going to, to disappear. I think they're going to evolve and change role. You will always need a place where you will meet people. You will always need a place where you will organize your network. And you need people also that can be teachers to become mentors. So imagine you are alone with your MOOC activity. Fine, first of all, where are you going to find the best one, the good one? Second, how are you going to interact with your peer and with your teacher? So for me, it's really complementary. I was queuing this morning to enter this very nice place, starting to chat with students. And I told them, who are you? Are you going to become a startupper? Guys say, yeah, but it's hard to find information. Okay, but I say, there are MOOCs. So yeah, I started to look at some of them, but I don't know how to make it happen. So I do believe that MOOCs are here, good. They are not well structured already, and it will give another layer of content. As you were mentioning, it shouldn't be a semester to learn. It will give them a free layer of learning. And if they want to learn faster from the other, good. If they want to learn in deeper, good. So you will have, in my opinion, the basis plus a new role of the teacher and the MOOC to complement.
Soumik, are you going to rank the MOOCs at some stage, given that you rank universities as well?
Not really, because I think one of the major issues that MOOCs solved was this whole, if I can put it this way, kind of a coexistence of asynchronous and synchronous learning system. So it created an environment wherein you could actually learn personally and be in an asynchronous system while also access a synchronous learning system, which is like more of a classroom environment. The problem is this. One is what a friend from Busuu said. One is the linearity in MOOCs, right? So it is still a very legacy LMS kind of a delivery, but then you get from point 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. I mean, why should that be there? That's one of the things, because people have different learning needs, speed, pace, everything is very different. The second problem is that it has assumed that when a candidate is accessing a MOOC on a mobile or any other device, the medium that it has assumed that there is no noise in the medium, all right, which means distractions. So MOOCs are not competing with MOOCs, they're actually competing with Facebook or Twitter or anything else, which basically I can go to and shift. I can basically put a tab on and I go anywhere else. So in reality, going ahead, these are some of the major challenges. Linearity, the motivation of sticking in that particular platform and making sense out of that. And I think the evolution of the whole mentor side, wherein teachers really do more than just delivery. They basically come up with, let's say, more value-added inputs to the candidates. That's all.
Talking about teachers, sorry, Bernhard, you want to add something?
I just wanted to add, as you pointed out, I mean, I think MOOCs have been criticized a lot because of low termination rates or finalizing rates. But it's technology. It's a first start. They will evolve quite substantially. And Udacity, for example, has now changed. They have offered a so-called nano degree in Android software development, which is a very new and required field to program apps on Android. It costs $200 a month. You get corrected by professional software developers who correct your code overnight. And they actually will now put the best students in this course forward to Google, to meet Google at campus and to probably hire a few of them. So I think MOOCs are evolving a lot. And the second point I wanted to make, we obviously, in Europe and in the US, we're quite spoiled in terms of access to education. But we should not forget that the vast majority in the world does not have access to traditional form of education. And especially within MOOCs, for example, India is now one of the largest countries for MOOCs access because simply there's no other choice. If you're in a rural area in India or in China, you cannot choose your local school. There is maybe no local school, let alone for Android software development.
So MOOCs are still acting as a tool. That's the whole point I was trying to make, saying it's still a tool for me to learn.
But not replacing entirely the formal education, traditional formal education.
Don't think so. Don't think so, because it's more for passive learners.
Yeah, I think the point that was made earlier, and I fully agree about the social element and the need for social interaction for students and the teacher, the role of a good teacher and the support network it can actually provide when the going gets tough. I think these are fundamental components. And I very much see that MOOCs can be a very successful delivery mechanism complementing a good teacher, complementing a social network, being part of the delivery of education as opposed to something that will just displace everything else and we will all be sitting in front of machines and be learning. I think the solution will be, can we use the best of what they offer and actually bring teachers? There's, I mean, you mentioned emerging markets. There are something like, I think by 2020 there's going to be something like 2 billion people wanting to learn English. There is no way we can build classrooms and get physical teachers in front of 2 billion people. Yeah. We have to find ways. We have to find ways we can do this virtually. But bringing the support network that students need is very, very important.
I think that's the kind of conversation that needs to happen between the informal and formal sector. And I think it's a very good example. And the formal sector should be learning from what's happening with MOOCs, what kind of learning happens, how social is it personal? And I'm not sure that from the formal sector we're actually doing that homework, so as to speak. Are we really learning as much as we should from about what's happening outside? Because we have a very large comfort zone. The formal system has, it's hyper-regulated, it's compulsory up to a certain degree, etc. So it looks like disruption is not going to happen, but it's just around the corner. Actually, disruption won't be disruption of learning. Learning needs to happen. It will be the disruption of things happening within a classroom. So even if they could manage to have 20,000 more classrooms, they shouldn't go that way. Because if they do, they'll be doing the wrong thing. So I think we need to learn about the way our kids, or millennials, are learning.
Talking about opportunities for maybe launching startups in education or launching new companies or developing existing ones. I mean, you all have experience about where are the interstices or the opportunities for launching new businesses. And we are here surrounded by entrepreneurs who may be thinking about entering education as a business. So I was wondering, maybe we could start with Bruno, of course. You are not forced to reveal what your PhD students are actually launching with EIT, but which areas or which businesses you think may attract the interest of investors in the future? What are some of the opportunities you see in education in the future, not just delivering education in the formal way, but also providing supporting services for existing educational institutions or maybe helping the assessment of participants or the access of participants to education? I mean, what are some of the areas where we will see startups growing in the future?
Before going to topics, I just would like to say that at the end of your study, you still need something before becoming an entrepreneur. You need some elements to provide you with some kind of pre-incubation support. And this is something which is developing. And without that, it might be hard to become a strong startup. And the second thing I want to say also is that we are also encouraging startups when they exist, for example, in Madrid, we can help them to go in other countries in Europe. So that's another point, is internationalization, not only in the US, but also in Europe. Topics on where we are working today is, of course, based on this multiplication of data, is urban life and mobilities activities. This is for us a really important point, and for it we will need the data and we need Internet of Things. So our students are really pushing there. The second element is health and well-being. It's clear that we want to continue to live healthy. So we need to get prepared and we need to be helped on how to move from 40, 50, 60, 70 years old the best way. So you have some tools that can help you for that, and lots of our students are working on that too. So this is some example.
Bernhard, do you see some other opportunities beyond the
I
delivery
would
of...
definitely not go in language learning. It's already very crowded, so don't go there. No, I think everything with regards to employability skills. So less of the formal education, but what someone needs to do a job, especially with software development. I think there's going to be a massive need for software engineers going forward, and the traditional universities are not really fulfilling that demand. So I think software development delivered in an online mobile way with adaptive learning capabilities could be a good idea.
If I may ask a question to Tas, because we are talking about millennials most often, and then we forget about something that Bruno was raising, actually the modern aging phenomenon. We are going to see many countries, not just here in Europe, but in China and elsewhere, where most of the population will be over 55. So how can we actually address the needs of the senior population who may need, to update their skills and continue in the labor market, since, the retirement age is actually being extended there.
Yeah,
no?
I think that's right. I think there is a combination of two facts, if you want. One is we live longer, we work longer because pension ages get pushed into the future. At the same time, I think the pace of change and technological change is so fast and accelerating that none of us can rely on the formal education that we have had 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I think a real shift on continuous education, on supporting education, and also I think the trends that we see in higher education around specific skills, about micro-credentials, micro-certification, micro-training on specific parts of what do I need to do my job better, or what do I need to do a new job, is I think how the educational industry can help individuals.
So modern aging is actually a segment or a field where there's lots of opportunities for creating new ventures, new startups.
I think it's really exciting. I think, again, technology brings us the ability to do a lot more there, and to be ability to kind of focus on specific skills and offer people might not want to do another 3 or 4 year degree. They might want to do a specific intervention on a part of their job that they just need to brush up their skills on. I think these are the areas where I certainly see a lot of demand for.
Nieves, do you plan to expand your activities into maybe the senior segment of population?
Well, I feel that it's really, we give it names, but it's all really about learning and how to get learning right. Whether it's for the younger, for the older, for the senior, it's about getting learning right. So any approach to, what does good learning look like? How does it become personal? How it's adaptive is the key to success. Whether we then use it for different age groups. I think one of the problems we have in our present education system, that it works in segments that don't talk to each other. So we have the school system, and the university is giving its back to the school system, and the other way around. And then we have companies, and then we have groups of entrepreneurs, and it just breaks. That process is broken in too many places, because not the right conversations are happening. So I think if it's all about learning, and we're all in this for the same basic issue, I think there is a lot more that we could share. In terms of what we're looking for right now, why we're here at SEK, we're trying to launching this initiative that we call SEK Labs. trying to invite young entrepreneurs who have ideas about learning, about education, to come and work within real living labs, which are classrooms, which are maker spaces in our schools, which are media labs or whatever at the university and the school settings. Because very often young people with ideas have to work on their own, have to work in places apart from where the real thing's happening, which is within classrooms, and that's the kind of setting we want to provide. And it's a way to engage in the kind of conversation we're really looking for, because we're going to learn a lot from it. Our young students will learn a lot from these young entrepreneurs, and the other way around.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Soumik, would you like
so
to?
I just want to add that I think one of the parallels we can really look at for this kind of an innovation is what happened to the music industry, what happened to VHS tapes and all that. So there was this progressive format innovation which changed the game for both these industries. All right, Apple came, iTunes came in, and they just kind of, they rule it now today. But you still have a Spotify for music. So the whole idea is that if you are looking at starting up in education, you might start looking at what sort of format innovation you could bring into education. The other thing is, there is also space for the framework side, wherein if you are saying that, I could be in asynchronous learning, and I can improve, let's say, take an example for Duolingo or a Busuu, the usage of space repetition algorithms or something like that, which improves the learning experience of some people and acts like a learning hack, it's very interesting. So the kind of investments which I'm seeing personally going ahead is what really happened in music industry or VHS and all that. So it's more of formats, exactly how Khan Academy is doing it today, or let's say any other such startup is doing today, and I think that's the future.
Thank you. I guess we have maybe 5 minutes for a couple of questions from the audience, in case. Just 5 minutes. So, couple of questions. I see lots of familiar faces in the audience, many entrepreneurs. So there's a hand there. Do you mind introducing yourself briefly? And
I'm actually one of yours from IE. I'm from the IMBA. I'm a student, and I was interested in your opinions about the basic main issue of education, which for years has been giving knowledge, but knowledge is now becoming very cheap. It's in the tips of our fingers. So do we need to change the main idea of what education is trying to achieve? And if so, what will be the new main idea?
who would like to pick this question, which is a very profound one, no? Soumik, would you like to respond?
I'm pretty excited about this question. The thing is, as I mentioned in my initial comments, we have defined education as a service, and that's how it has been existent for a long time. So you need to pay for a service, and you get that service, all right? The problem of that kind of a model is there is always an inflation situation that happens, which is what we are seeing today. There's an inflation of degrees and all that stuff. Education inflation is for real today, right? Jobs which you are getting for grads are going to MBAs today. Now, the problem is, if that model sticks around, it's not going to make any difference to our learning or education in the future. Thankfully, the disruption comes from technology, obviously, and the use of it, and redefining this whole education and learning as tools to better human experiences, tools to better human learning, tools to better human, let's say, networks in existence. So the future, or what we're looking ahead, is basically disrupting this whole definition of education as a service. It cannot be existent after this. That's what my point is here. Mm-hmm. Back to you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Any other comments? Yes, please,
just to add, I mean, I think one of the points I was making earlier about, shifting our thinking from inputs into outputs is very, very relevant here. I think it's exactly, education needs to move into what are we trying to achieve, why am I getting educated for, and what are my goals in life, and therefore providing people with the tools that they need to achieve those goals in life. I think that's the big fundamental shift we all need to make.
If I may, I think that for a long time we've been talking about the new role of teachers, the new role of students. And we don't want to go into this question of what's really the role of education, because it's what's the role of formal education as it's been for many hundreds of years, and what it represents, because it does represent within society and in relation to many agents, political too, there is issues concerned. So that's not the debate we want. It doesn't look like we want to open it, if I may say so, but that's actually the real one, and that's the one we're all engaged in. And that's why we need different agents, non-formal, informal agents, to come in and play the game from within the system, not just trying things which happen outside of the whole system, to try and help us really open that real debate, which is what's education for right now? Is it really serving the needs of our students, the needs of society, the needs of progress as a country? And that's the key question. Are we facing it? I don't think so, not yet.
Okay, I guess we are running off time, actually, but you should all feel free to come and say hello or present, your business ideas to any of our panelists. But for now, would you please join me in a big round of applause to them? Thank you.